around a few numbers, so we don't actually have a quorum tonight. We won't be voting on anything. That's why I want to put that out there, but we will go through the same process and review everything as if we were. We'll do first is.
Hi, I'm Susan Petrick, Middle School Director.
Hi, Michael Allen, I'm Assistant Superintendent for Middle School Curriculum Instruction in the school district.
Rhonda Blake, Director of Planning Services, Osceola District Schools.
Tom Phelps, Deputy Superintendent, Osceola District School. River Celebration Committee.
National River Task Force. Director of Youth Task Force, Ms. Sergeant Crowe.
Ms. Blicky, Medical Counselor, Celebration K-8.
Steve Wyman, Executive Director.
Thank you. As far as the agenda for this evening, I want to remind everyone again, we talk about the quorum each time. If you have a question, a concern, we'll try to keep it as orderly as we can. I'll try to recognize everyone and give them an opportunity to speak. One thing we would ask, though, is, and it's a challenge when people come in and out of the meetings and they haven't been here for before, we end up rehashing a lot of things. So please don't take it as being disrespectful, but if you find we're on something that we've already gone through repeatedly, what we'll probably do is guide you back to the minutes from previous meetings. We can't approve the meeting notes, but I would ask if there are any concerns or anything we've missed with respect to the meeting notes we've taken for the last meeting. Okay, we'll make a motion at the next meeting to accept those minutes.
Do we have someone taking the minutes?
We do.
Our
very good essayist.
We're protecting the Ness is a jolly good fellow, right?
Between the two of us, we should be able to get just about everything.
Okay.
I've got big shoes to fill. Tom's good.
I suspect we're going to move through the agenda fairly quickly this evening, by the way, so those who are interested in football games and such, we actually have some. Member reports, again, we've got just a few members here, but Pat, anything from the last meeting?
No, I don't, thank you.
No,
Okay. As far as next item on the agenda, Tom Phelps has brought a group in to walk us through a middle school presentation talking about curriculum, some of the challenges of middle school, things that we all have an interest in. I don't want anyone to believe for a moment that this is a path toward moving the middle school or any solution. It's just that we have a robust discussion and better understanding, and we're trying to make a recommendation that works for all constituents. So without any further ado, I'll turn it over to Tom.
Thank you. Over the past, 5 meetings that we've had, at each meeting there's been a little bit of discussion in reference to middle school. What does the middle school look like? We talked about art, we talked about electives and advanced courses, and so somewhere along the way, I thought it might be a good idea for us to hear about Middle School 101, I guess, if you want to call it that. I asked if it was possible for our middle school team to present basically what does the middle school look like. Part of their presentation might be to include a little bit of, if we were to expand and make a middle school somewhere in Celebration, what would that look like? Because there has been some discussions about, unique course offerings for within Celebration. We might be able to touch on that a little bit, but basically our focus for tonight and our team is, their focus really is just to, educate the group on what does a true middle school look like, as we have outlined them or fit them within our district. So each middle school does look a little different, but they do have a lot of similarities as far as their course offerings and stuff. So that's basically what our purpose is tonight. And I'm going to turn it over to Mike, to Susan for their presentation. If you would like to just have a seat here, is that fine?
That's fine.
Thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
Did everyone hear back? Back okay?
Yeah, we can hear, but just for the people online.
The microphone's closer.
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity, and although Ms. Petrick and I have not been at the meetings, we've been keeping ourselves apprised of the progress that's been taking place, both with meetings with Mr. Phelps and Ms. Blake and staff, Mr. Wells, but also we've watched the videos online, which I think also is, wonderful that the community is so transparent and open. But I just, since I have the floor for a moment, I just want to express my sincere gratitude for everybody taking the time and invest into education. Sincerely, there are so many hours by so many stakeholders here, and it's really worth mentioning. So I wanted to say that first before we said anything else. I thought it'd be also helpful to give you a little bit of background on the two of us. I've been in education in Osceola County in the middle grades for 21 years now, as a teacher, as assistant principal, and now assistant superintendent. It's been 8 years as principal. 4 of those were at Horizon Middle School when we experienced exponential growth in the late 90s and early 2000s. So just by default, I have experience there of increasing programs and opportunities. And then I had the opportunity to transfer to Narcoossee Middle School, and just happened to be the first principal when we broke away as a K-8 on that end of town. So in the events that's number 1 or number 7 or something, an expansion of the middle school, rest assured that Ms. Petrick and I both will be there every step of the way, and we bring a vast amount of experience. You want to introduce yourself?
Okay, I'm Susan Petrick, director, but Celebration is home for me. I was here for 10 years, and I was part of the opening leadership team back in '97. So I got to be here for all those great meetings that we had back in the day. So I'm excited to be back here again with the opportunity for building curriculum here.
Excuse me, real quick second. Ms. Petrick, can you spell the last name?
P-E-T-R-E-K.
So anytime that we're looking at expanding programs, what we want to do in a middle school setting is we always want to look at expanding, strengthening, and developing. We would never want to take away from anything that's already working, and so many things are working well in the grades, specifically in the grades 6 through 8 at the K school currently. So what would a traditional or larger middle school look like for you? First and foremost, and I think it's been noted here before, but I feel very strongly that there needs to be a principal that would be devoted to the middle grades. Somebody with full experience, ideas, somebody, middle grade students can be very, yeah, they're a handful. They can be, it's a very pivotal time in kids' lives. So I feel as though the principal devoted to is probably a benefit rather than a K-8. Now, the K-8 school certainly has had outstanding administration and principals in the past that have, we worked closely with Ms. Clayton and Ms. Malone over the last several years, and they do an outstanding job, undoubtedly. But we do hear from them often that they feel stretched, and it's difficult to maintain both the primary and the secondary side of the school. Sort of some of the standards that come along with expanding to a middle school would be a chorus room, a devoted art room, band room at least equal to what is present currently. In addition to that, the STEM lab as well, although the STEM lab at the K-8 is unique. Most middle schools or most K-8s don't have that type of STEM lab. The middle schools all do, and would certainly have something equal to, comparable to what's there now. In talking to Mr. Balone, he asked for, on his question, smart boards and audio enhancement system. That would be any new construction in Osceola County, that would be standard. So every classroom would have smart board audio enhancement system. There's some discussion regarding computer labs, and certainly computer labs are part of new construction in middle school, but really have a vision more for additional mobile technology. So the computers would come to the students rather than the students come to the computers. That's a vision. And there, of course, would be increased opportunity for electives as you're adding more students. There would be, like I mentioned, art. There would be probably additional sections of drama. We would want to maintain the culinary and the STEM and PE, obviously, and some of the other wonderful electives that are already taking place in the middle school. The Media Center is the exciting part, and one of the most exciting parts to me conceptually. The Media Center really is the hub of any school. And having one that would be completely devoted to young adult literacy and with a more college and career emphasis, I think would bring some benefits for us. Take it over and be a little more
Okay.
specific.
So when I start thinking about curriculum, I start thinking about programs, and I think back to when we opened our original K-12 school back in '97. And I'm thinking technology was really at the forefront. And so we've got some opportunities coming up with FETC where we're going to be investigating what kind of technology can we have for state-of-the-art middle schools now and for middle school programs. We want our technology to be something that is fantastic, you know, at the get-go, and that we can continue to work with and support. I know I've talked to Rose in the past, and an AVID program would be something fantastic to have at the school, along with some additional accelerated options. I mean, we might even be able to have a dual enrollment class. I mean, that would be like a college dual enrollment. And why not here at a Celebration Middle School? I mean, why not you? Why not us be first? So we think that some of those kind of things would be fantastic to have here. I would like to see maybe the professional development school piece come back a little bit. I was part of a PDS with 4 or 5 universities at the time. So PDS is another thing. I still have contacts with universities, and that's something that we could bring to the table. Again, what Mike and I are committed to is to really being prepared to support the vision of the leadership team that this school has and bring, you know, anything to them. I've started some discussion with Discovery Channel, Discovery Education. They've got some new people on staff that actually are from North Carolina, and they're from national demonstration schools where they've turned technology around, and they asked if they could come for free and just brainstorm on ideas for whatever plan we decide here and whatever plan you decide. So we've got some exciting things in curriculum that we'd like to share and we'd like to continue to explore now that, you know, we're having these discussions.
So whichever plan the task force promotes, and then whichever one the school board ultimately decides upon, Susan and I will be the ones in the middle school realm that would be here walking hand in hand with your administration. We yield to questions if anybody has.
Actually, a quick question with regards to the FETC, is it Florida?
Educational technology, yes. It's next week.
Explain a little bit about, I guess, what a traditional middle school day would look like versus K-8 middle school day.
You know, probably the biggest.
Differences, I guess.
Okay, so the biggest difference between the K-8 and the traditional, and please know I don't have stake one way or the other. I think both are have tremendous benefits. There are pros and cons to a great K-8, and there are pros and cons to having solely a 6 through 8. But really, I would say it's the flavor, it's the atmosphere, it's the environment that is a little more grown up, a little more less primary, and more college and career focused. Can you expand on that?
Again, I'm looking back at the media center, and you know, in a K-8, a media center is a place for lots of different age kids to come. When I think about kids as they grow and mature, their spaces kind of change. So I'm looking at kind of a college type media center where it looks a little different. You know, there's not that little story corner and things like that. When your kids come in, they see places to research for colleges. They see college pennants, I'm thinking AVID again, and they see that kind of thing. You know, there's lots of resources for careers, and that, you know, a different feel to it, research stations and things like that, which is, it's a space totally for them. Lots of technology stations and maybe a technology cafe and things like that. So that's what I'm thinking about in the media center, kind of a cafe, place where they can come, and yet the little ones aren't coming in. And again, K-8s have a lot, but it's exciting to think about a middle school.
What about sports? How much, do you need a lot of land for traditional middle school because of sports? So what kind of land do you need?
No, what currently is being played at Celebration K-8 is, if I remember correctly, they field teams for just about all the events that the county offers. So no more than what you have now. Probably the difference is that you would, the opportunities would be greater. You can offer it, because the student body is larger, you can field more players, and there's more opportunity for coaches for coaches that are on staff. So for instance, if there's not a wrestling coach, and I'm sorry, I don't know if there is, if there isn't, but I know I'm just speaking from experience, from my Narcoossee experience, we didn't have a wrestling coach, but then when we expanded the faculty, then I had a larger pool that I could pull for the coaching experience, and likewise with other extracurricular activities as well.
So if, what we're really talking about would be kind of a regional middle school, right? Because there wouldn't be enough Celebration students to fill a middle school. Is that what we're really talking
I
about?
think the positioning, at least for the context of this meeting, was
Yeah.
more around middle schools in general, not specific to
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
situation.
Right.
And I think that helps set the tone a little better with the group too.
Do we know how many middle school students we have currently K through 8 and what the projection would be?
That was my question. I just wanted to ask size. That was my question. What's the perfect size?
Oh, we just love going for these numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I pulled them today
Oh,
just
perfect,
because
thanks.
I thought maybe that question would be asked. So, there are right at 500 students in
Right now.
Right now.
grades 6 through 8. Right?
And from your experience, what is the perfect size for a middle school?
Okay, so I would 1,200 is sort of the standard, and in meeting with staff, the conceptual plans I understand was 1,000, and then so you back up 10% by 900. But in meeting with Ms. Blake, the projected opening of 17-18 with 807 students. So, which is, that's a great number.
That's a cozy middle school.
Yes.
Yes.
What was the total, 800 what?
That's a,
Right, when I opened Narcoossee, the first year of the split, we were at 667, and then within 3 years, we were over 1,000, which in my experience still is very manageable.
Just one question I'm curious about. We've had a number of conversations around perspectives on the number of transitions for children and what the upside or risk is associated with that. Do you have an opinion around middle school versus K-8 configuration in general, and how will children transition from one to the other, or to high school and success beyond? I know it's a loaded question, but.
You know, I see success both ways, and like I said, there are pros and cons to each model. So I don't have a preference, honestly.
I would agree with Mr. Allen. I've worked at, obviously, the K 10 years, but before that, I was at a true middle school. And while it is cozier and a little bit easier transition, I do see more of an autonomy when they have transitioned and are surrounded by just middle schoolers at a true middle school. So I would agree with Mr. Allen. There are pros and cons to both, and really not one answer to that.
Open up to the floor.
Let me ask my questions.
Leah, I have to say for the record, Leah Carius, 1049 Nash Drive. I was just, my thing is, well, for traditionally in Osceola County, what size are your K-8s in whole versus what size are your actual just middle school standalones? What are your enrollment numbers kind of average?
So the average for middle school is 1,132 students, but that's as of today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we have 8 traditional middle schools in our district.
So that's the 8 middle schools. Okay.
So that average is 1,132 students. And for K-8s, it's right around 1,300.
the whole school size is 1,300. So we're pretty much right there along with everybody else then. Okay, for K-8s.
There are four public school, non-charter public school K-8s.
And and talking about different programs, I know because my kids are now in high school, they went through the K-8. But they did actually, one of my boys actually got a dual enrollment class. He got college credit for a computer course with Mr. Gunther that he proudly is on the refrigerator door. He's got college credit already. And, but now the AVID program, I know because it's big at the high school, and the IB, but have you started IB? What have y'all done?
No, we do not have.
We don't have an IB down to our.
I would love to see a middle
Because-
grades IB program. I would love to see an AVID program.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pie in the sky. Something for every student. Would be my ideal.
And when it comes to sports at our K-8, I know there's a few things that we don't have. I think like wrestling, I don't think we have wrestling because we don't have a coach. But I think some of our, if I'm not mistaken, Rose, you'll probably know this, we do have teams for stuff, but we're not able to host all home games. But sometimes, as we
Because of
travel
the
more, like we have no track and field, so our track and field always travels.
That's right.
They're never at home.
Right. And there's sometimes conflict with the rec field.
And, okay, but other than, I mean, that's just like, that's a celebration thing. But, so that was really my only question, thank you. very
Some
much.
of our middle schools have tracks and some do not.
Because that's a big land use,
Mhm.
I mean, so, but some of our middle schools are close to a high school that they get to use common things, is that how?
Yes, that's correct.
That's how they do it, they're close enough within using the same fields?
Yes. Take, for instance, St. Cloud Middle School, they have a track, but it's not asphalt or rubberized, it's clay, so a lot of times they'll, if it's available, they'll use St. Cloud High School, which is in walking distance.
So, but high schools are able to accommodate letting some middle schools use their amenities, that it's workable?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Leonard? Leonard Tim, 411 Campus Street. I just got one more follow-up question. You said there's 132 average in the middle schools. What's your largest and smallest?
Yeah, 1,132 is the average. The largest is Neptune Middle School. Currently, they're at 1,352. And then the smallest is Parkway Middle School at 863.
And you're talking about the addition of a lot of these new technologies and such. Is that out of operating, or how much of that is out of capital? Most of that's out of capital budget, isn't it?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that part of our presentation was very conceptual.
No, but I just want everyone to understand that no matter what technologies you add, is coming out of a very finite capital budget that there is. Is that correct?
And smart boards and.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's an FF&E budget, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, which some of that stuff will come out of as well.
Hi, Laura Desjans, 1021 Banksworth Street. I have a question. In the district, do you have another mega campus of 2,500 students built in downtown, in the middle of a small community?
Narcousie would be equivalent to, as far as the number of students, would be the mirror image, that would be the middle school would have the greater number of students than the elementary school. In Plan 1, the elementary would have the majority of the students versus the middle school. So yes, there is a campus or a complex that has a number of students.
So how many students are in Narcousie?
There's about 1,200 at the middle school and about 900.
Is that a more favourable ratio to have a smaller elementary, 900, and about 12 or 1,300 in middle? That way around is more favourable to the.
It's not a prototype for 949 for elementary.
949 for elementary and around 11.
Is our prototype.
Okay. So the option one is actually looking at a reversal of those figures, essentially, that we'd have a about 800 middle schoolers and how many elementary in option
The
one?
build-out plan alone for the celebration community is 1,300 elementary students and some change, just from your own build-out.
Yeah, so 1,308.
So is that mega campus in Narcousie built in the center of a community with small streets and houses built
There
around
is
it?
one way in and one way out of each one of those campuses. So although there are differences, there are some, I would consider some unique restrictions to those campuses because of the one way in and one way out for each one of them. Celebration, although downtown, is unique in the fact that there are multiple ways to access the campus. So each one has its limitations.
So how long is the wait in the morning in Narcousie?
The wait probably, I don't know the exact time for Narcousie, but Mike, you could probably tell us more than it was when you were there, but it was a significant wait time as far as, when I say significant, when the bell rang, it was probably in the neighborhood of about 30 minutes. I believe even within celebration, according to Mr. Balone, within 30 minutes, the kids are cleared and dismissed.
Right, currently, right? So,
Correct. And remember, part of the, if you were to consider option one, there is additional queuing space, which would be part of that plan, which would be pulling some of that traffic off of the roadways.
May I add one thing real quick? I happened to look up Narcousie real quick because I was thinking it was on a fairly large road. It is on a dual lane divided road out there. Is that correct?
It's on highway, yes.
Okay, much unlike the single lane coming in on Celebration Avenue or on campus through neighborhoods. You come off of a dual lane highway and you go directly in a driveway that goes into a school.
But it does back up onto that road.
No, but that is a description of what you would say.
Definitely. I mean, there are some, again, unique things about both campuses, and there are some restrictions. As
Oh, I don't, I just like for everyone to know all the information as I go through and when I start comparing differences and such, and that would be one. Thank you.
Could you give us some information about what a K-8 middle school should ideally have? Because obviously you're suggesting that there's, a range of different models of K-8 in Osceola County. But what are, in your view, the things that a K-8 middle school should definitely provide to its students? Because obviously it's not going to be quite the same. So if you were going to go through the facilities list, would it be the same as for the middle school? Or would it be different in terms of the provision for the middle school students?
I would have to say that it's going to be different for K-8 schools based on the facility. Depending on if you've got enough art space, if you've got a band room. I know for band here, I think back when I was assistant principal, we worked with Mr. Cochran to try and get some middle school band, and that's when I think the 5th grade band started up, and I think that's still in place now. But so you have that for some. You can have music for the elementary, but you may not have a whole lot of band opportunities for the middle school. It happens to be flipped here, where we've got more band opportunities for celebration. But again, the facility is going to dictate what we can offer to middle school. The primary, I don't say the primary focus would be the elementary, but the majority of the students in a K-8 school are typically elementary school, so they're obviously going to take up the majority of your space in your offerings.
So just to recap, so there's it's really on a case-by-case basis. You decide what goes into, in terms of facilities, each K-8. And obviously, the ideal model is towards what an independent middle school would provide, but it doesn't differ.
We like to offer as much to the middle school as we possibly can. Because of the fewer number of middle school students, that is a bit of a challenge. Because you can only offer, sometimes it's difficult to find teachers to teach the class when you've only got one of them. So when you have a more traditional type of middle school, like Mr. Allen pointed out, we have you have a bigger pool of teachers to pull from, and you can actually make a better schedule, I guess, if that makes sense.
And that's the most,
With more offerings.
that's the most difficult thing is the scheduling, because when you're 2/3 elementary and you're trying to accommodate middle school as well.
And it can be done, I mean, and Celebration
It's
does
done
a
well.
fabulous job with it.
Yeah, it's done very well with us, and I think we
They-
offer fabulous programs, and I think we are giving the students an incredible experience, and they're ready for whatever program they choose to pursue in Osceola County, whether it's the IB program or OXA or CTE programs, they are ready, and so we do a great job.
And just to put a little finer point on Rebecca's question there, so in light of, option one, if we had gone down that path and none of us were meeting here today, what was the plan for the middle school, as you had proposed it with option one going ahead? I mean, what services would we have expected with the existing plan? And I'm not sure if I'm kind of looking a little bit at you too, Fly, but I don't know.
Well, I mean, I outlined some of that already, what we would offer. I know art came up a couple of times in our conversation, band, those are two things that would be offered to the.
But those were hard planned offerings as part of this
Yes.
effort? Okay.
And really, the only thing that, if you were to step foot in any one of our middle schools and look at the course offerings, just the general course offerings, the advanced courses, the honors courses, the regular courses, that type of stuff, and the art, those are things that pretty much every middle school is going to have. What Mr. Allen and Ms. Petrick were talking about was, would we be offering something that's a little different to Celebration? Avid was one, again, that's something you're going to find in a traditional middle school. Rose brought up, the idea of IB.
Excuse me just for a second, for us non-education people, could you explain what those acronyms are?
Avid.
Yeah,
It's yours.
just
Okay.
just the acronym.
I happen to do have it, so it's advancement through individual determination. So an AVID program helps students in middle school really get prepared for college and careers. It has a component to it that has an organizational piece. Mostly, if you would look at an AVID kid coming through the door, they would have a notebook with an agenda and with everything planned out. They have tutoring in class to support them taking advanced placement courses. So it's kind of got an embedded tutoring program and things like that. So it's a ton of support for kids that really keep them on track for college and career.
The high school has it.
Okay.
It's very,
Okay. Thank you.
AVID.
IB is International Baccalaureate.
Okay.
and the high school has that as well.
And that was one of the reasons why IB was kind of in our mind. And just so you know that in our, this has been a while back now when we were originally discussing option one, and what would be the unique, I guess, niche at the Celebration Middle School. We talked about several different possibilities. Remember, these are just possibilities, okay? Would be IB. IB, obviously, if you're doing middle years program, fits in beautifully with the theater into Celebration High School. We talked about STEM, and we also talked about the possibility of the school, if we could find partnerships, would be like a digital academy. So there are things that we've discussed that would be different for Celebration, in addition to what would be offered at a traditional middle school. But again, those are all things that have just kind of been talked about conceptually. And so I just, so I think that, hope that answers your question.
That's very helpful, but when you say possibility, how do you define possibility? Does that mean it would really be there, or it would be there depending on funding, or be there depending on?
Well, funding obviously is going to drive a lot of this, okay? And honestly, we haven't moved forward with a whole lot.
Sure.
I'm not investing a whole lot more time in option one yet. Once the decision's made by the school board, if option one is where they want to go, then we'll invest some more time in it. But right now, we're looking at the 9 options that's before us to see which ones, or if anything else might be feasible, and we'll invest our time there.
What are the possibilities of bringing some of these great opportunities to a modified expansion of K8. So, for example, a middle years program for IB or an outfit program, where we're looking at an expansion of the K8 and it's remaining as a K8, but with a focus on middle school. Is that a possibility, do you think?
It's going to be a numbers thing, and traditional middle schools again have more to offer because they have the numbers. It's going to be difficult to support a middle years program at a small middle school where there's only 400 to 500 students. There is a cost to the district in order to. It's not like we can just say we're middle years or we're pre-IB. We have to go through quite a few steps to become a middle years program school. Digital learning potentially be done at a modified school. That would just be something that we would actually be wanting to secure a partnership with someone in order to assist with that. And as far as STEM, again, STEM would cost some additional funds, but I think you're already kind of dabbling in STEM a little bit, I believe, at Celebration.
In middle grades, they have one of the best project leadership teachers in the entire district out there.
So basically, to answer your question, I think,
It's about
as you said,
numbers.
it is about numbers, and the more students that we have in the school, as far as middle school, the more we can offer. I want to touch back on the athletic piece of it. Celebration has teams for, I think, almost every sport. I do know that there are some sports that they do struggle to form a team, and there's not a whole lot of substitutes, whenever they go out to play. They still hold their own, though, I can tell you that, okay? But if you had more students, obviously you can build a bigger team, and that sort of thing. So I just wanted to point that out as another point for additional students at school.
One of the things I want to compliment you on those, and I think you ought to change the wording, instead of STEM, I think it should be STEAM, because you keep adding arts. And I think we all like the arts part of it.
Can I just add on one additional comment? It would be important that the principal be involved in those decisions about programs. Unless the instructional leader of the school is on board, it's doomed for failure.
Just before I turn over the floor here, I just want to recognize Tom Sonneborg, who probably has luggage still going around the carousel as we speak, because he must have ran from the plane to get here.
Happy to be here, thank you. I left -4.
Oh.
Glad to be here.
Did you go to the game? Did you go to the
I did not go to the game.
Well, I knew you were too smart. They said it was -20 wind chill.
Welcome home.
Hi, yeah, Eileen Barr, 1138 Mosaic Drive. Because we are talking about, in theory anyway, in this discussion about a larger group coming into Celebration than we had talked about before. I do want to say one thing about the traffic that I've thought about, and I just want to mention this. One of the real problems is that not necessarily the pickup or the drop off, but after you've done the pickup particularly, very often, because of the layout on campus and Celebration, you end up in this deadlocked position where you can't move, even though we've got 3 crossing guards and we've got a sheriff, and you'll find yourself not able to make, you really just sort of get landlocked. You get, there are cars on all the sides. The safety issue is that kids are now crossing in addition, not necessarily at the corners. And it's just something that I wanted to bring up with any plan, but particularly if we're talking about a plan with more students, because I certainly can see ways of dealing with a lot of the traffic problems, better drop-offs, better pickups, new locations, maybe no on-street parking. But this is, I think, a product, because as you were saying in Okusi, yes, it may be only one line going in and out, but it's probably an orderly line going in and out. So if you have to wait for your 10 or 15 minutes, fine, but it's in an orderly fashion. What's sort of scary about what happens here is that suddenly you're stopped. You don't know where to go, and there's it can take quite a while before you can move it all. So just want to mention that.
And
We do clear the campus by, I believe it's, the traffic is cleared because I'm out there, but it's 4 o'clock and we dismiss.
Yeah, it's cleared from campus, but then those blocks surrounding it,
Yeah.
that's
No, no,
you come to a dead,
No,
yeah.
no, I'm out there. It's because sometimes, we're done by 3:55.
Here at East Lawn and Celebration Avenue,
It's terrible.
it takes like an hour.
Well, it doesn't take an
There are
hour, but it
days.
takes a while.
From time that school lets out to about an hour after, you avoid that section like, yeah.
I
It's-
haven't experienced that.
I
And
have.
I'm on Medina, so when I go home and I know if, we're out at 3:55, I never leave at that time, but if I'm done by, 4:10, it's pretty clear going towards East Lawn to Medina, so. I think you do clear the campus and there's people and employees at every exit to make sure things are done in a safe manner. And so when you.
Yeah, but it's not the on-campus that I was talking about, it's as you leave.
Right, as the whole town is exiting to go home, we're gonna get some traffic.
And that's one of the things we hope the traffic study will address as well. We'll be able at least intelligently see what the feedback is from that and apply that to what our working knowledge is day to day. So, any question from the floor?
Sure. Chad Gruca, 1020 Maiden Terrace. One of the questions I had is really about the amenities and some of the extracurricular activities for the students. Knowing some of the placement, especially for the number 1, it seems to kind of occupy a large area of what's already recreational space or land, and then expanding by the numbers you're talking. What's the consideration for the lack, taking away that space? Is there any outlines or guidelines that you guys are currently using to, field space per student or things of that nature, and kind of goes in hand with diluting the existing facilities inside the school, like cafeterias, computers, and some of those other things? I'm a little bit concerned of diluting or the removal of some of those amenities from the students. So I'm just curious what you're, looking at when you're pulling some of these areas away or possibly diluting.
Keep in mind that if we were to build on the current site, downtown site, then we have land that would be mitigated, so that would give us a significant amount of additional land to build on. The conceptual plan, has the building in one location. Again, it's a conceptual plan, but part of that still maintains a practice field. We've also put in for a track that would go around there. There is still a baseball diamond, and possibly 2 baseball diamonds. So you still have some recreation area. We try to minimize the reduction of that. Obviously, we still need to have some recreation space, and we're trying to be mindful of that. But we also feel like you still have like a soccer field, and in addition, you'd have a new track that would go around that. So again, we're trying to be mindful of the play area and the practice area.
Sure, and how does that also kind of drive into the facilities themselves, as far as like your cafeterias, your arts, your sciences, and some of those that have those like lab type areas, as far as for having to welcome in the more students to take advantage of those areas?
Again, if we were to build on the current site, and there were to be a middle school on site, you'd have an art room, you'd have a cafeteria. It would be a warming kitchen. What we propose would be an expansion of the current cafeteria to basically just where we would prepare the food, and it would be served through the middle school. So there would be 2 kitchens, there would only be 1 kitchen. So again, maximizing the facility that we already have.
So that the existing kitchen is large enough to take on that extra capacity and enough kitchen equipment and whatnot? Okay, thank you.
My concern, I hear all of these fabulous opportunities from this, like my 7th grade son, who plays sports, he loves the programs, and I think it's really exciting to think of all these possibilities open to middle schoolers. I'm just really concerned what the other part of this campus is. We keep talking about option one, and I know we go back and forth on this because that's quite an unpopular option with Celebration. But my real concern in this is what it looks like to be an elementary student on that campus. Because we're not talking about an expansion of facilities for a 1,300 person student elementary school. And right now we have 1,300 students in the school. We have 3 grade levels that don't get art. I think I'm right in saying there's no art in middle school. So we have 1,300, we have 1 art block, we have 3 grade levels that don't get art. And we're going to have 1,300 elementary students and the same amount of art facilities for them. So how is that going to work in terms of facilities for the elementary school in the planning? We're creating a really huge school on this plan, and we're not hearing how each student is going to be served.
Well, speaking on the elementary side, we would obviously add additional options. They may not all get art, and they basically will all get art, but it'll be on a different sequence, so they may not get it. They might not get it for an entire week.
That's what they're on right now, actually.
And again, so we try to add additional offerings to them, like perhaps a foreign language, something like that. So in order to make sure that all the students get through a block area.
So you were imagining a build out in option one. There's a build on both sides for elementary as well. You're imagining additional facilities there that would assist those students too, or just the middle school?
Well, the middle school would get the expansion as well as the cafeteria facility here on this campus would get it. But keep in mind that we would be moving into the remainder of the building where the middle school currently occupies. So those would be spaces that would be available for elementary offerings.
Okay, that kind of was a little touch on what I was bringing, because when I heard the original plan, that 1,000 students adding to our K-8, I assumed that was, and the preliminary idea that y'all had mocked up, the one big building that was going to be over at the other side of the ball field. Yeah, he's got a map up here I'm looking at. I would just assume that was basically you were going to expand the grade levels K through 8, that we were just going to absorb another 1,000 students across all levels. But it sounds like the more y'all talk about it, you're basically building a middle school onto an existing K-8. So you're basically, are we going to end up with more middle school than elementary, or is it going to try to continue that same ratio of a K-8? I don't understand what your 1,000 students.
You'll end up with more elementary and middle school students than what you currently have.
Okay, but it sounds like you're really increasing the number of middle school students.
It'll actually be across the K-8 grade levels. Because remember, part of option one is to really not only celebration capacity, but outside of celebration.
Right.
So you'd be pulling K-5 kids from West Side, K-5 kids from,
okay.
and 6-8 from West Side.
That's where I was getting confused. I didn't know if you were trying to relieve middle specifically or everybody in general. So that original plan, up to 1,000 students, which we know it's really like, what you say, 800 or 750 or whatever it is. But so adding that building, you're basically taking the students that are in our buildings, what is that, 11 and 12 or 10 and 11?
We don't have a building 12.
We don't have
building 11.
So it's 10 and 11, which is our middle school buildings now. You're basically moving all of those kids out to the new structure and then expanding the elementary into those existing buildings. I'm trying to get, is that basically what you're talking
We're
about?
going to have 1,500 fish there and
Yeah.
1,000 there.
So, but is that what you're saying? So the new structure will be dedicated, designed for middle school, and then use our existing middle school to expand our elementary. That's what we're talking about. Okay, I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
But
Thank
they're
you.
not building anything else on that side of the campus. There wouldn't be any buildings for elementary. That's just going to stay the way it is.
Yeah.
But you're going to modify, or for modify, like the cafeteria and things like that, in order
Yes.
to bring everything up.
Bring it all up.
To accommodate.
Yes, and just to note on the parking, the dismissal, the way the school dismisses our kids is great. I mean, they do a phenomenal job. The kids are cleared, and every year they make adjustments. Our buses have, over the course of the years, have come at different spots. They do it right. What the problem is the community side of it, because parents don't always do what you tell them to do, and our roads aren't designed. But the way the school handles it is phenomenal, and they are top-notch. I want them to get the credit they deserve, because they do really work hard out there, but it's just, yeah, it's the roads thing, it's not their fault. But I just, thank you for explaining that.
If I can make a suggestion, because it seems like we're spending a fair bit of time still going back to our option one discussion that we've covered a little bit in the past. You know, one thing that is clear, though, is what we might do is on our notes around pros and cons, is really try to identify what the programs are, and I think is a real driver of that. So we might want to drill down on that when it comes time to evaluate. It's still, you know, while not broadly supported, it's still one of the options that's alive, and I won't say it's well, but it's alive. And as we go to kind of get the traffic report after the workshop, which will be scheduled for next week, we get some more insight to make better decisions or make a better recommendation. That's something we should really drill into.
I have a question. Would the middle school have would it be its own admin building and the front office staff, and they would have their own area?
So that would be a different school, right? I'm not even, it's not okay, we're just saying not having
We
a
originally had a discussion way back, was, you know, would that be like an extension of the K-8, and we would add an assistant principal out there and still have one principal? And as we've talked more about it, it needs to be a standalone. It needs to have its own administration, its own.
We have our own
support staff.
announcements, we have the broadcast
Yes,
would not
it would
be.
be- it would be separate.
Hey, but see, that's just contrary to what I think you just told me. You just said you're expanding the K-8 as a whole, but now you're talking, it would be more of a standalone middle school.
I guess we must not have connected.
You're thinking physical.
Physically, we are bringing K-8 students in through K through 8.
Oh.
The middle school will go with the middle school, with the expansion, and K-5 would stay with the current facility. the way
But
it is.
essentially, you're talking two campuses on one footprint.
Absolutely.
Is that?
Tom, for logistical purposes, would it be considered Celebration Elementary School and then Celebration Middle School? Or would it be Celebration K through 8, just two different buildings?
It would be two separate
Two separate
facilities,
schools on
two
the
separate
same.
names, two separate numbers.
I think that was always implied, but never stated as.
Yeah, that's where I think a lot of, thank you.
Yeah,
That's-
so I mean, so
yeah.
just in theory, if it were to occur and it were to happen, you have Celebration Middle School and Celebration Elementary School, K-5, 6, 8.
Two
Separate principals,
separate principals.
separate administrative teams.
And just a few common pieces of the facilities.
Correct.
Would it
Okay.
be staggered start times also?
Haven't made it that far yet, but possibly, yes. That would be something I would want to include the administration on, and also kind of talk with the community a little bit too. If there was a way for us to stagger the start somehow, and perhaps for those who want to drop off, I'm just going to talk just in general, but if the elementary were to start first, and they want to drop off their middle school child, we had some way to, we had some enrichment or something that the middle school child could go to for 15, 20 minutes before we did our arrival for middle school. So just some way, because we heard the question or the concern of, I really don't want to drive here once to drop off my elementary and then have to do that loop again and drop off my middle school. If we could figure out a way to start those times within reason and make one drop off, but we would just find some activities for whichever grade level it was until the school day started. Those are things that we still got to work through. But
The normal middle schools within Osseo County, they all start at a certain time or based off of the circumstances of?
Based off In a way, this helps clarify the difference between, say, option 1 and option 9 then, in a way, because we're talking, when we talked before about option 9, combination of ideas, we talked about keeping essentially the K-8 model intact, I think, and expanding it slightly. Whereas model 101 is not an expansion of the K8. Let's be clear on that. It is a separate elementary and a separate middle school from the central. That's really helpful.
Yeah.
Any last questions before we let Tom and his team get out of here from their 20-minute presentation? Thank you, folks.
I'll let them get up. Can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
Tom, you're not going to like what I have to say. Michael DePilly, 116th Lake. It sounds like you want to increase because there's 500 students in middle school, there's 1,300 in some total. It sounds like you want to increase the elementary by 75% and the middle school by 50%. And you can't even guarantee a program that's going to better the students that are here now. I don't see everybody's saying, yeah, you could have this, you could have that, but that's not really big enough. This is not small enough. And meanwhile, we don't have those programs now. So, I mean, if I was listening to what everybody's saying, I'm like, the only thing we're getting is increased traffic, more headaches, and it's helping out the Osceola School District, and I understand that. And I want to help that out. I want to solve problems around the district, not just here. But it doesn't sound like, as a Celebration resident with children in the Celebration schools, that I'm getting anything better, except for more hassle.
I would disagree. And because we do have a very strong middle school now, however, we are limited because of our numbers, and I feel that if we are able to have larger numbers, those programs are accessible to us. So I think that would be a benefit to the community.
I agree, except for you said that our numbers were going to be different than you were talking about at other school, that our elementary school was going to be bigger and our middle school was going to be smaller. And that because of the small numbers, you had to be, you had to think twice about what type of programs you were going to get.
The middle school would be pretty much a regular middle school size.
Okay.
With an expansion or the middle school built on the current property. Or if it were built somewhere else in Celebration, it would still be considered a traditional middle school.
Okay.
And the number that is proposed is right in line with the middle school numbers that we currently have.
Tom, when you were describing all the benefits and the different things that the middle school provides, would that apply to this middle school then? Because I think the confusion may be that there was an understanding that there's going to be this K through 8 plus another middle school, and then that plus another middle school would be where all of these added programs and those types of things. But that would apply if you were to build a middle school on this property, right? Right. Okay.
Or another property.
Or another.
Or another property.
Right.
Option number 1 and option number 3, what you described as your curriculum and your offerings would be the offerings that you would be providing to the Celebration Middle School group.
I think also.
I was just going to say, and the main reason that you look at putting it with the K through 8 now, or the K, is because of the land. You have the land, right? Other than that, would there be any difference in cost if you built it somewhere else?
Significant difference.
And why, is that because of the sports, or what? If you take the land out, if you figured out how to get the land,
You have to build an
what
extra kitchen.
cost savings are there? I see the kitchen is the same. I mean, the
You'd have to
kitchen
build
is-
another gym. Because you had a gym, you had a kitchen, on a new site, you'd have to build a kitchen, and you would have to build a gym.
Oh, our understanding is we would get another gym.
I was understanding
Yeah.
too.
That's
No, that
something
can
that's
happen.
been asked for.
Okay, so now everybody agrees with me now.
Are you going to use the same kitchen?
So just to begin, there's just far too many people talking for anyone in the audience to, who's dialed in to hear the conversation.
We do
So-
it elsewhere.
Can we just one at a time, if you can step up to the mic? Speaking of which, Mike?
You ready?
Sorry, thanks.
That's
Mike Jackson, 413 Sycamore. Good evening. Couple of things. One, I get concerned when we talk about the quality of education because of the name that we call the entity. Whether it's a middle school or a K-8 or whatever, as we start talking about different offerings. I don't know that you can categorize the quality of education because of the type of school it is. I know there's experts that might disagree with that, but as soon as you fall into that trap, I think that's a problem. Secondly, I think I get concerned when we talk about it being a game of numbers, and we have to have scale. This isn't a manufacturing plant, it's not a productivity thing. We're not looking to spread a lot of fixed overhead. There are economics we have to deal with, but at the same time, we have to be able to put together a curriculum that's gonna work for our kids. And if the numbers aren't there, then we gotta find shared resources, people gotta work half-time, we gotta find other solutions. We gotta get creative. We can't just say that, well, it's a numbers game. I don't buy that. I think that's a cop-out. I really don't. I don't think bringing a ton of people into one spot gives you excellence in education. Okay, we've got a 42% going college rate. We've got, what, an 80% high school graduation rate. We got a lot of room for improvement. And I think we got to think outside the box. So I think it's more than just a numbers game.
Thanks. I'd like to make a suggestion. We've got the workshop scheduled with the county school district on Friday of this week. It was postponed from last week to this week. It seems to me that this is going to be a really important discussion point to bring back to the committee here in terms of what the specifics are and sort of drill down a little bit more. I think, from your perspective, what you're hearing is a lot of, geez, we didn't know, or we thought it included the gym, we've discovered it doesn't, those sort of things I think would be helpful just to kind of articulate real clearly and bring back to the committee. So if I can suggest just to.
You got it written up there that they included gym.
Yeah.
And it was based on budget.
Yeah.
Talked about.
Yeah.
We were looking at it.
And I think in the discussions, I think we kind of decided, I can't remember which meeting it was, but that the gym, an additional gym may not be what would be in the best interest. Perhaps a multi-purpose type facility would be better. But, I'm not sure that the funds from our side would be there to include a multi-purpose facility or a gym.
So some other generous benefactor is donate a gym, for example. That would be wonderful. Okay, got it.
Tom, if you don't build a gym there, does that change the conceptual design or the layout of the middle school? And the reason why I ask that question is because of this, I've seen this conceptual design here at the meeting, and I think it's been posted a couple of different places. If there is a different, that's the thing about conceptual, is that it's conceptual. But if there was something updated that we could share, or if we could get this one to go away, I don't know what that would look like. I just want to make sure we have the accurate information that we can share with the residents.
Yeah, we can definitely look at it to see, John and that
We need to know what we're looking
More
for, and
direction
then
first.
John will know what is fine and professional needs to kind of be.
Well, it might be important for the people watching at home to know that this is, again, conceptual. So what we've shown isn't a final drawing.
I just want to get back to the cafeteria kitchen, because I've been inside the kitchen a few times, and it's tiny. I just don't understand how you plan on making it work.
The architects that have looked at it to date said with a little bit of expansion, that single kitchen can still serve the food, but the 6th through 8th grade would have their own cafeteria space, and we do that throughout the district. We have other kitchens that serve 2 schools, and then we transfer the food next door to the next facility where there's a warming kitchen, and then the children eat at that cafeteria.
So does that mean even more processed food than right now?
It's the same food, so just moving from one place to the other.
Yeah, just eat and serve, yeah.
It's cooked in one kitchen and then sent over to the warming kitchen where the kids actually eat at that
So,
cafeteria.
so the current layout of the kitchen will be sufficient to serve an additional 1,000 students?
With some modifications, yes, but just not a full second kitchen.
All right, thank you.
I know I've mentioned this in passing but I just want to reiterate, especially before the workshop on Friday, which is I'm imagining what this 1,300 person Salvation Elementary School is going to look like. What does it mean to move into buildings 10 and 11, which have right now been purpose-for middle school students, and they look like middle school classrooms. They don't necessarily look like that. They have labs and things like that. Obviously, creating two schools on the same site here is going to need a lot of work on the elementary school to make that work successfully, I think, especially when you're doubling numbers in certain situations or expanding greatly.
From a building code perspective, you have K3, which are primary, and your intermediate are 4 to 8. So your middle school seats and spaces are already designed also to accommodate 4th and 5th grade. You might just change what's hanging on the wall, et cetera, but the space itself, by the state standards, 4 through 8 work in one kind of space and K3 work in a separate space. So other than maybe some restroom modifications, if we have larger K3, you have to lower the heights of the toilets, et cetera. Some modifications like that have been accounted for, but it wouldn't be a major overhaul.
So you just basically shift.
And I can say those 4th and 5th graders are going to have great science labs.
You
You will have outstanding labs, I guess. They were K-12, so it's exciting.
I just have a concern about the size of these schools, the size of that elementary. I mean, I don't just have a 7th grade, I have a kindergarten as well. And what does it look like to go to a 1,400 person school at the age of 5 with not just 7 or 8 kindergarten classes, but the reality would be what, 12, 13 kindergarten classes?
They're already walking the campus at 1,300 kids. There's already 1,300 students walking the campus.
That's true they are. But they also have a cohort that they move through this school with. They have 6 or 7 classes in their grade level. They know who's in whose class, in each class. If you double in that number, they lose a sense of that, I think, necessarily. So I have real reservations, not about the opportunity in middle school, because I hear what you're saying about middle school, and I know that there are lots of things that our middle school students would benefit from. But as an elementary school parent, I have real reservations about what an elementary school would look like, and I think many elementary school parents in the town would feel the same way.
Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks, Tom and team. I'll let you escape.
Thank you very much. One quick clarification. Last week for the traffic study, I said it was being performed by Osceola Engineering. It's in fact being conducted by Hanson Walter and Associates. So I do want to get that cleared up for the record.
It's the same thing as the original study, is that right?
It's the original study, but I had said that it was Osceola Engineering, and it's actually Hanson Walter and Associates. So if we could have the minutes reflect that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So,
Original study, I don't know
well-
who did that. I don't know if that's who did the original study, Vanessa, that's just who has to be this one. Yes.
Thanks, folks.
Very much.
Thank you.
very much.
Thanks.
I'll see some of you Friday.
We're gonna go back a little bit in our agenda now that we actually have a forum. We can approve minutes and things like that, so let's get the housekeeping things in order.
Mr. Chairman, I would move we approve the minutes.
We have a second? All in favor? Opposed?
With one correction.
All right.
Which correction for the traffic study.
Oh, thank you, yeah, so we'll have to make.
Jeff, do you want to approve the agenda too? Just for-
Yeah, I'm going to do that as
Oh,
well,
okay.
thanks. The minutes got.
I know you want to do them both.
And again, the agenda, since we're now nearly completed.
So moved.
Second? Done. Okay. Member reports, we went through those. Tom, do you have anything that you want to add?
No, other than the meeting, the workshop is this Friday, the 15th, 1:30. Tom Tuesday is going to call it, as is Todd, and you will call it at 2 o'clock. Yep.
Unless my meeting is.
All right.
Okay, and then.
Friday meeting,
A wonderful thing. Past meeting outstanding items. We had 2. One was around the donation development operating agreement. There was some discussion around date for that, and if memory serves me right, I won't go by memory. That will be on the agenda for the February 2nd meeting. Clarence Thacker confirmed that. You may see it mistakenly appear as the 19th, but should that happen, they will move to have it for the 2nd, because they want to focus that on the announcement of the new superintendent. And then the other item was the Florida Statute 163. We did get an opinion back from Larry Brown. I'm not an expert on this, Tom. I don't know if you want to share anything or not, but.
I am going to ask for some more clarity on this during the
Okay.
workshop, but it was a long, lawyerly way of saying it might apply.
What is that statute?
It may or may not.
Yeah, what?
It might apply. You remember when Cookie Kelly was here a few weeks ago, so there is an existing Florida state statute that says if a existing public school campus is increased in size by more than 5%, they need an interlocal agreement from the county. And usually school boards are exempt from county ordinances, but I think this is just a state law that says if you expand by too much, then it starts to affect county-wide issues like roads.
Right, okay.
So I think Larry was saying they always ask the county, they're always in coordination with the county. This probably won't be a problem, but it probably does apply.
And the county's very limited in terms of what it can ask for anyway, is
Right.
what he sort of inferred here.
Right. I think so. There probably is an interlocal. There just has to be something more than courtesy that the county agrees that the program is being expanded by more than a little bit.
Did you find out what part of the statute it was, 160?
We did get a memo back with more detail than just 163.
Point.
163.31777, but subject to the limitations of statute 1013.51.
You remember that one, right?
Yeah, I remember them very clearly, as you can tell. Those are the specifics. So those are the two outstanding action items. The other thing, and I apologize because I did dial into the last meeting, I could only pick up parts of the conversation. Some voices carry better than others, so thank you to those of you who have been accused of such in the past. The whole issue around numbers, I think, is worth just talking about for a second. There is no exact science to this. What we try to do is demonstrate the order of magnitude, and plus or minus. I don't think there's anyone that's saying that we're off in our numbers that we proposed 2 meetings ago by more than really 10%. So the fundamentals are there in terms of the magnitude of the expansion we require. It doesn't change the challenge we have to solve for, which is helping the board with their significant shortage of seats. Traffic study updates. We heard we still have one pending. Anything from your perspective, Todd?
We're still tracking towards the end of January. Our consultant did come across a permit that they need from the CCDD to put the cameras up, so try to help us with that. So they thought they had to pass up Osceola traffic. They intend to do traffic counts this week or next week.
One thing I wanted to propose for our next meeting, because it seems to me that constantly looking over and seeing our long list of options can be a distraction on occasion. I was going to suggest that what we might consider doing is those things that we've categorically said, no, ain't going to happen. Let's take them down so we can kind of at least narrow our field of vision. If anybody has any thoughts on that.
I agree.
I think we all agree.
So if we agree, let's plan that for next meeting then. Okay. I can open up the floor for any other questions, comments. I think we're going to get an early wrap up tonight, but, because we have no new information.
Just, if you don't
Please.
mind, just an observation. I apologize. I just couldn't get here any sooner. The agenda item of middle school curriculum presentation, I thought was going to be just that, but when I walked in, listened for a few minutes, it seemed like a defensive option one. And I don't know if that was purposeful or not, but is that what happened while I was?
I think it became that a little bit.
Yes.
Only because, from my perspective would be, they walked through, these are the things that would constitute an ideal middle school. If we had a blank sheet of paper, these are the things we would want to have in terms of programs and offerings. I think as we kind of investigate a bit more, well, what were you planning to build? What we've discovered is, well, not all of those things may be able to be entertained, because certainly the size of our middle school vis-a-vis, the ideal is inverted. I think they use the term mirror image. So because we don't have enough staff to constitute a large middle school, some of those things may not happen. We may not have the physical premises to do some of those things. So I don't know if it was necessarily defense, but maybe a mutual discovery not all listens in there.
I would say they were selling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something about, maybe you're gonna get a new school, you know, and you're talking about the two people who were in charge in middle school, so.
I don't think their position has changed since the beginning. When they said that that was where they were going, they thought that that's what we wanted, and all their planning has been toward that. No offense against you, Todd, because you were working on it for a long time, but that's what they thought. And it seems that every time we raised an objection, whatever the answer was opposite of what he said 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, was that, when he answered my question, did that seem that he said, we're expanding the KA? It's going to be a KA. And then
He wasn't being deceitful.
No, but it just, I mean, because it sounded like, you know, we're going to expand across the KA. So it sounds like he was saying it's still going to be a KA school.
It wasn't a
This was
complete,
something
yeah, it
that
wasn't.
always concerned me about
But-
the plan, it was always gonna be 2 schools.
Yeah, and see, but they didn't make that clear. That's the first time I've heard them out of their mouth say, Celebration Elementary, Celebration Middle.
Well, I
Actually,
think
that was said at the CCDD meeting.
Yeah.
And see, that was, there was very few of us there.
There's gonna be 2 distinct, your middle school will never have to go to the main building, according to this plan. Everything will be self-contained, which therefore means it's a freestanding middle school.
Except for
the gym.
But, well, the gym's right there.
It would be
It's all,
shared by
yeah, it's all, the gym and the middle school will actually be
They'll be
closer
closer,
than the
yeah, than they
elementary
are now,
school and
yeah.
the gym.
And
What about the
you know, I
library?
will say, I think this is something that's happened over time, because there was a lot of chat, and I think I'm quoting almost directly when I say, we all knew how attached Celebration was to its beloved K-8, and we just thought we wanted to expand it, so that is something we've heard before. But in practice, it was always going to be 2 schools.
And I think the administration, there's been an evolution of thought about how the administrative function works. Because when we stopped discussing it was an assistant principal in both locations and a principal. And it does make a lot of sense. It is a different process.
Tom, just to be clear, I don't think they were being deceitful.
No.
They were being
No, that's
politicians.
not. Yeah.
Very good at it.
Yeah, so here's where, after 7 meetings now, here's where I think we are. You know, some good things have happened, and on other things, probably, you know, there's been less progress than we'd like. The fact that they are going to act in good faith on an extension of the agreement, as long as that keeps happening, that's a really good thing. Doesn't solve the problem, but it takes a lot of pressure off. So as long as that keeps going well, we'll all be thankful about that. But I think in a large way, everybody's just been really polite for the last couple of months. And, you know, we're trying to not be argumentative and, you know, they're trying to cooperate, but they haven't moved off of their point of view at all. And that became apparent to me when I was trying to schedule this workshop, which I was really hoping to get done last week. And asking them to be very deliberate, because we're only getting an hour. And it's not going to be a lot that we can do in an hour, so let's get really specific about what we want to do, and what, if we can only focus on one thing. What I would really want to explore with you at your office, with all of your resources and tools handy, is how much can we expand the east side of the campus only? How many seats can we get with, in addition to the 88, in building 11? What other opportunities are there? And they clearly did not want to talk about that. All they want to talk about is clarification of the numbers, which comes right back to supporting their idea. So we're going to work hard on trying to accomplish something on Friday, but I think what I have to counsel you on is we got to lower our expectations a little bit about what we can accomplish in an hour. And, you know, we're still going to be polite, we still need to be, everybody needs to be cooperative, but the entrenched positions that we were all afraid of really are there.
You said east, I'm sorry, I'm directionally challenged. East side means that building 11, that part. So bringing that to a little expansion, like we talked
That's my shorthand, I apologize. Most of the school campus is on the east side, and you got the wetlands running north and south, dividing east from west. The teaching academy and the gym and the parking lot, the play fields are all on the west side.
west side. But when you said expand east side, you mean just expand where our middle school is with another little.
How many seats can you put over there?
Yeah, okay. That's what they pushed back on?
It's a physical. I'm a developer, I think of everything in development
Right.
and architecture part to it. It's a physical exercise first. If we wanted to push it,
Right.
how many seats could we get over there? How close does that come to Jeff and Vanessa's map?
What-
The real objective?
Didn't Susan say the original footprint had that building over there?
Yes, but you gotta remember, that's also drainage right there. So it's just, you need to look at that. I have one thing, at your meeting on Friday that I would like, I would appreciate if you would just get some clarification on. Tom Phelps had repeatedly said that they did not want to expand the K-5 over at.
Reedy Creek.
What was it?
Reedy Creek.
Reedy Creek, because then they would get to 1,300 students.
Too big.
That's
And it's
okay
too
for
big.
us.
And I guess my concern is
That's what I'm
that
saying.
it's too big for Reedy Creek educationally.
He said the same thing about West Side too.
Exactly, and I guess that's my biggest concern, is if it's educationally not good to expand a K-5 over at Reedy Creek, why would it be okay to expand it here by that?
Because they don't have any
Free
money.
man.
But I think.
They don't have
one
any
thing
money.
I wanted to bring up that I do think, Tom, that they, at least from the discussions that we had previously compared to the discussions that you're having now, they have opened up the potential to look at, because it was an absolute mess that we were talking about. There is no ability to expand the West Side. There is no ability to expand Reedy Creek. And I do think they really are. And Tom has told Paige, they really are looking at potential there. So moving towards the hybrid option, I mean, our goals are, that we want to make sure that we understand when we move into a discussion with a future development, that we know where all the student seats are going to be, whether we do a hybrid option or whether we do in one or five, it doesn't matter. We just need to understand what's best for the school district has to do, and we know where it's going to go.
Yeah, what I want to really work all the way through on option 9 is how many seats can we generate on the east side of this campus? Does that accomplish the celebration-only goal plus the 20% that we open by contract?
You don't have to.
We don't owe them anything.
We don't have to do 20%.
No, we don't.
Because if
In high school.
In total.
In total, we.
I want to say it in a way that says we're not just solving our own problem.
Right.
Solve our own problem and deliver on our total obligation by contract. And then what does that cost? And how much of the 12 point whatever will be left over in the expansions of the
I'm 90% with you, except for the fact that I believe we've already contributed our 20%.
By
We've done
high
it,
school.
we've done it with the high school, and we've also done it by changing the configuration of the K-8 from a K-7. So, and we've got 147-ish, I think the number is, of non-resident kids there. So I think, we've already met that obligation. That's not nullifying the fact that I think we're not going to get a solution if we don't try and help with the bigger problem. Okay. Yeah, I hear you.
Keep
Yeah.
pushing it
Yeah.
on Friday, but we need your help, we need their help. When we did our straw poll 2 weeks ago, the members who were here were pretty focused that 9 looked like our best option. So let's really vet that option. But, now that we're getting close on that, it's like, well.
Well, now I think we're also discovering we're throwing a grenade at a middle school plan that we may not have been as clear
Well,
about.
I think the purpose, though, in fairness to the district, we said, what does a real middle school look like? And
Sure.
that's what they did. And so I think that, I don't think they came in here deceitfully
No,
saying, let's
no,
push
no,
number
no.
one. I think we genuinely wanted to know, what does a freestanding middle school look like?
Right.
More importantly, I think we need to pull some of what the freestanding middle school options look like. I think we need to try and pull it into what we're
I
going to
thought
do
we
here.
have an IB middle years program with 500 kids.
Because we don't have enough students.
Yeah, but it's a numbers game.
It's a numbers game.
It's a numbers game.
Sorry,
But they
folks.
have the numbers with the expansion in order
It's
to.
not
But
Yeah.
my concern is that we're gonna expand and still not have the numbers. So now we're gonna have more kids with,
Percent, yeah.
yeah.
So you agree with me then? when I
That
say
was
you
a-
agree
This
with
is
me?
what
I'm
gets
gonna,
me.
I'm gonna, sorry, I'm gonna just,
Debate things.
That's what I was
step
saying.
up the mic if we're
If
gonna
we
kind of
went-
battle for
yeah.
space here. Thanks.
So, Todd, do you prefer number 1 or number 9?
I really don't have a strong opinion. I mean, I think there are pros and cons to each. I think one gives you the potential to get the full slate because of the numbers, because of the funding. you have the potential to get the full slate of middle school offerings that you may not get with lesser numbers at option upgrade.
So what do you think Celebration
And I
residents
don't-
prefer?
I don't know what the end game is on the hybrid solution. If you expand, we have to work through numbers in the plan on number 9 to understand what an incremental expansion here would do, coupled with future growth, where that future growth will be, because if you max out capacity and K with an incremental expansion of, say, 200 or 300 seats, then you have another 300 seats come in with the build-out of Celebration. Where are those going to go?
May
So
I ask,
we need to understand all that.
and is number 3 just totally out of it?
Yes.
I mean,
Oh, no, sorry. I thought-
by, they have to build a new gym and a new kitchen, and you gotta find the land. But does that mean, I mean, a
They're not gonna
freestanding,
build the kitchen
The
or
cost,
just-
it,
It's a cost.
it's a cost. I think they said $30 million for a freestanding middle school versus between 15 and 20 for an elementary
Elementary.
5.
and does that include the land in it? That's probably the
That's
biggest.
just the building.
That's just- yeah.
Just the construction and building.
Really?
Yeah. And you need more land for the middle than you do.
No, that's,
For the-
well,
That's, yeah,
Elementary.
for the middle school.
I feel like number one is titling incorrect.
So at this
Yeah, we
point-
need to make that 1,000 is very,
That's how they presented it, so.
yeah.
Well, we know what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just have all this
you're
read
getting
up.
some,
Yeah.
you're able to leverage, with any annex, there's cost savings because you're leveraging some of the core facilities. That whether you shift schedules, so you don't have to build everything new and everything from the ground up. So it's more than just a gym.
So, just one last question. It seems like TCC really prefers number 1, because in the long run, they might have.
Well, we shouldn't put words in their mouth, but it's in their best interest.
Right.
Sure it is.
So can we start reaching higher? That's my question.
Well, may I have a moment? I don't know that I'd
I
ever.
don't know that you're going to get a different answer, but it's more than welcome. And I mean, number 7 would be, I mean, do we have concerns about number 7? But that's potentially possible.
Here's what I really, makes me uncomfortable.
He's saying combination, that goes K-5.
What really makes me uncomfortable about number 1, in addition to everything we've already talked about, is my sense of things is that the traffic study will come back and say what the sponsor of the traffic study wanted it to say. Just like all the traffic studies that I've ever done. That's how they work. And if it could possibly get through the gauntlet and somehow we don't object loud enough or strongly enough that it happens, a couple of years after it's done, the county is going to come in and claim all the safety problems that we're talking about now, and they're going to widen our streets. And all of the on-street parking on Celebration Avenue, Campus Street, Greenbrier, and whatever the one is on the west over here will go away. And probably all the on-street parking from Waterside to Golf Park. And the problem with that is that a lot of that on-street parking is embedded in the DRI approval for downtown. So, and Dan said it best about a month ago, when he was trying to articulate the problem with option 1. He said, smart people who have a point of view will find ways to mitigate the problems. But it's Band-Aid on top of Band-Aid on top of Band-Aid, and at some point, it just doesn't work. We're trying to jam 1,500 students or whatever that is into a neighborhood school site that was never intended to handle this number of seats. And we can, we can go through option after option after option of staggered start and finish times and drop-off lanes, and telling parents when they can and when they can't drop off. We'll go through, and there'll be another idea to mitigate this problem, that problem, that problem. And at some point, it's unsafe.
So Tom, let me ask this, because I wasn't around at the beginning. When this school was planned as a K-12 for total building, what was the plan?
Plan for the rest of the build-out? That's a great question, Todd. And in some ways, the numbers worked, but and I wasn't on the education planning team, but I was the liaison with the school district on the building of this building and the school. So I was there, but I wasn't aware of the numbers. I was more on the design and construction side. But at the time, in the early days, we didn't know if there was an interest for another parochial school or a private school or a charter school, or what all the options were going to be. So like a lot of things, that we didn't know what would happen 20 years from now. In fact, you know, I think the odds of Island Village ever happening were so low that I don't think we worried about it, to tell you the truth. And somebody said in one of the earlier meetings, the town hall meetings, you know, one recession, and the time of that, you know, that we'll solve this problem immediately. So it wasn't completely naive, Todd, but it was not completely planned out through the entire build-up, for sure.
It's okay if you have something.
I think what Rebecca said was very telling tonight. She said, you've got a kindergartner who's going, and you said, I don't want to get my kindergartner walking into a 1,300 student elementary school. And Tom's response is, well, she's doing that now. Because right now we've got 1,300 kids. Okay, and then, but again, well, yeah, 2 campuses, but my point is, but think about that. Now, right now, and I can attest to this, our 8th graders that are going to the high school, going from 1,300 to 2,000, now 2,400, they're freaking out. They get to that high school, that first semester grades tank. Everybody freaks out. And the school tells us, well, they've just gone from a smaller school to the bigger thing, and it takes a while for those freshmen to recover walking into a 2,400 school. There is a freshman drop. And so now, what you said, I thought was very telling. Now you're going to put our little kids at an 1,350 campus, and then our middle school, a little larger, not great big larger, but they get pluses out of it, but they're still, once you start adding kids to these schools, they freak out. They do. I don't think that's good for them educationally.
Jefferson, I didn't mean to do this, but
No, go ahead. Yeah, please.
I want to get this off my chest, and hopefully don't take up so much time that everybody misses the ball game tonight. But when you think about the national championship game,
Football, 50 minutes.
So we keep talking about option 1 is the least expensive option, and it is, because the school district already owns the land. There are efficiencies because of some of the base infrastructure and common facilities are here. It is the least expensive option by far. But if you think through what the unintended consequences are, and the cost of those unintended consequences, when the county, if I'm right, and the county has to come in here and widen these roads, who pays for that? That's not accounted for in this least expensive option that we're talking about up front. Taxpayers do. Somebody else pays for it. There's a reason why this Plan A, or Plan number 1, is so inexpensive. And it's just because they're below the line in somebody else's budget. It hasn't happened yet. And maybe I'm just gloom and dooming this thing, and I'm not trying to scare anybody. But I think when all of the consequences do happen, it's not the cheapest option.
If they were to build a middle school on a different site, we still have the problem, Rebecca, that you are expressing of expanding that for having primary grades and such a large number with the primary grades. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So the only solution that this task force is recommending is modifying the K-8 to add 400 more students.
This is the leading contender.
That's the leading, can you give a synopsis of anybody that's just plugging them in right now?
My concern in that is, it's not just 400 seats that we need to squeeze in, evidently. We're bursting at the seams for a cafeteria and art space right now.
So
we need a building, a visionary building project that is going to somehow bring together what we need to make our smaller school function with the grade levels that we have. That's what we need. And I don't see the county right now offering us any visionary ideas in terms of
A couple of things, so I remember them all. First, back to the middle school and the presentation. I think there was a method to their madness, if I can say that, and I don't mean that to be insulting, in that they laid out the kind of things that you could have if you had a larger number of students. And there was leverage applied there. There was a carrot hung out there and said, if you do this with option one, you can get all these wonderful shiny objects. Okay, let's face it, that was there. I think you need to push back real hard on that and not let them do that. I understand numbers, I understand leverage, I understand scale, but these are students, and I don't think it applies on the same one-for-one ratio in a lot of other industries. So I would make sure that we got the curriculum we needed, the labs we needed, the art programs, whatever they are, and you don't have to have a middle school with whatever number of students to get those things. If you settle for that and then jump through that hoop, I think you're making a huge mistake.
I would love to see that.
Secondly, with the numbers, I think you've beat the numbers up so many times. I hope you don't have to beat the numbers up again in the workshop. I think that's, you know, they're the subject matter expert. They have all the information. We're learning and trying to follow them. I think you're almost insulting them by continuing to go over the numbers. I think they need to come up with the numbers. You need to tell them you want a hybrid multi-site solution and figure it out and not debate the numbers any longer. The other thing is the numbers are projected for a long period of time. How long, whatever we're going to call the one after Island Village, how long out is that, Todd? In a best case scenario?
In a best case scenario,
Yeah.
it could be now.
Really? I'm surprised you would say that. I didn't expect you to say that. My
So-
point is this, though.
It is very hot.
The market is hot, okay? So let's assume, but when you're projecting these numbers and you're thinking out 5, 6, 8 years, whatever the numbers are, okay, for students, think about technology. Think of what's happened in the last 20 years in terms of technology, learning at home, self-directed learning, everything else. Where are we going to be in 6, 8, 7, 10 years? There may not be a need for all the bricks and mortar that we're looking at. Look at what's happened to online shopping and all the hard, you know, bricks and mortar that are on the corners and how people are shopping today. Do you ever think that was going to happen 20 years ago? I was in the bricks and mortar business. I watched it happen, big time. Okay?
In Rose, how many virtual kids do we have right now?
Well, we have hybrid virtual kids,
Right.
so, but how many do we have solely virtual?
Because they have to take their testing here, correct? Their FCATs and everything?
Small number. Because then if they're fully homeschooled, then they could be registered with us before homeschooled. It's the ones that come in and just come in for testing because they do virtual online, it's very small numbers.
Under 10, okay.
So I think you have to think about the future. You know, you've got to, you can't make all your decisions today. And you got to, what was it, Gordie Howe said, you got to skate to where the puck is going. So figure out where that puck's going, okay? And you may not know exactly, but at least skate in that general direction rather than just working with your abstract numbers here today, and you'll come up with a better result, trust me. So skate where the puck's going.
Which is what.
You can.
Which is what.
Gordy said you could. I got a license for
Hybrid
it.
solution.
Which is.
So the hybrid-
Which is what it, okay.
That's the intriguing part, because we're not building for.
You're not making a commitment. You're not making.
But we need to know where we're gonna, if we do have to build that, we need to know where that's gonna happen and how much it's gonna.
You're not putting all your chips in one
That's very
spot.
encouraging to hear you say that. That's very encouraging to hear you say
We've talked
that.
internally, I mean, it's, as long as we know what the end game is to get H65, we like the hybrid solution.
Well, you spread your chips, and you're not committed to something.
And you enable the county to solve the regional problems.
Exactly.
In a reasonable location where you minimize.
But I think too, the homeowners want what you want to be able to tell the developer. We want whatever build out, we want those kids with our kids. We want to be the community school. And so we want that promise to be good, that we have those stations for those kids, because we don't want it us and them, we want them all together.
Well, let me get back to that, because Todd's not gonna agree to a deal, and neither is the developer, unless they got that assurance. The
Right.
developer, Crescent's gonna have to be satisfied with the solution, otherwise they're not gonna do the deal, and then there's not gonna be a need, so it's a non-starter. But I think, let's go back to option one. I'm gonna just go back and repeat some history here. Option one developed because a number of people got together and talked to a limited group of people who had certain agendas. And the ball got rolling. And I think at that time, the school district, and I'm pretty sure I'm accurate on this, but I'll qualify it. At that time, the school district felt that all the money that was going to be generated by Island Village needed to be spent here in this geography. I think we heard that loud and clear from Tom Phelps pretty over the course of the meetings. So they were operating under that premise. So they needed the big bang. So they talked to a few people how they can get the big bang. They knew they were going to get some pushback, so they threw a gym at it, and they threw a parking garage at it, and that hit a dead end. So there they're standing there, and we have our little meeting, and Jay goes off in another direction, and you know how we ended up to where we are today, okay? Now we're all the way full circle back to, well, you don't have to spend all that money in one spot. And we can do a hybrid solution. And I'd like to think that they're being a little more genuine and a little more committed to exploring that. Some of the feedback I've gotten says that, but I don't know. But I would hope that they're going to be a little more aggressive in terms of finding a multi-site solution. I think it makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons, besides the problem we would have here. And I think you really need to push them on that particular issue, but I would suggest you stay away from the numbers. Don't get caught up. It's going to take your whole time. We need to get in a strategy of what the solution is.
We have to talk about the numbers because they're going to say you need 600, 700 places. We're going to say
No, they aren't going to say that.
we need to. They already have.
The-
I mean, the numbers that they provided to us, Todd, do you remember the numbers that they had said, just the total number of kids that we needed to add specifically for celebration with the expansion? It was sizable. It was like 600 or 700.
Yeah,
For Celebrate for Island Village, no, it was.
For the whole build out.
Yeah, it was.
Well, you're not gonna do,
I thought it was like 600.
I don't think you're gonna do everything for the whole build-out. You gotta just consider Island Village. I think the numbers are more in the 250 range. And in the 250 to 300 range, from what I've looked at,
Jeff came up with, yeah.
the per square foot with the school district is 44 square feet per student in the middle school. They've got a different number for lower levels, they got a different number for higher levels, but it averages out to about 44 square feet. You know this.
They're still working from their numbers because I thought they do it this evening.
We got to reconcile Jeff's numbers with Ron's numbers.
Keep in mind, this is only a 10 or 12,000 square foot building. That's all you need on this facility. 10, 12, 13,000 square feet. Do the math. Those numbers work, trust me. Okay, thanks.
Just one thing I just wanted, I feel like, especially when people aren't here to defend themselves, I feel like we need to step in and balance this a little bit. One of the things I heard that was encouraging, and I heard it very clearly, Tom specifically said, I gotta be honest with you, since we've had these discussions, I haven't done any more work on this. I put that aside. And I believe that to be genuine, and I've not heard anything to the contrary. In fact, Todd, you're kind of reconfirming that even, hey, we're starting to think about, so just in the spirit of what we started here,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
we don't need to be anyone's fool, but I think we've got genuine partners that are rethinking their options, and that's a very good thing considering where we started.
Todd, I just wanted to say something because I know when I was looking with my daughter, I lived with my daughter and my granddaughter a couple of years ago, and before we ended up here, I was here anyway, and we moved into a house. But, we sat down with the great schools, and we looked at Dr. Phillips and whatever. And going back to Leah, I think the thing is, and somebody mentioned it, I think now we have about 150 or 160 kids in a kindergarten or first grade or second grade. What's being proposed is a kindergarten class or a first grade class of 250 or 300. And to me, as a parent and a grandparent, that sounds enormous. And if I was doing my research about do I want to buy a house in Island Village, I would think very carefully, particularly in Florida, where you have only 50, you have the limits. So you're talking about 12 kindergarten classes. It just, to me, it sounds not warm and fuzzy, it just sounds very, very big. Let me tell you about one other thing that I thought about in watching this group. I've seen a group of people who have sat with the numbers, and this goes back to what Mike, and he has a good point there, with the numbers that said, how little can we get away with? And then I've seen the people from the schools who said, how big could we push? And perhaps the idea is that instead of talking about 9, and some people have mentioned it, the idea is that we going to embrace number 1, but we need it modified. When you start throwing out the number of 1,000 kids, which is really 100 kids per grade, it becomes very, very big. And the idea is that maybe the concentration be that we really don't want to see that totally separate building with a totally separate administration. My personal feeling, and I think I said it at the first meeting when you got up and you said, no, talk about it at number 9, you know, when I said, couldn't we do a modified, is that the number thing is, I think your point is that we can't be concentrating on what's the smallest number we can get away with. We have to say, what's a reasonable number that will satisfy Todd in case there's a huge expansion and everybody who moves into Island Village promptly has quintuplets. And, maybe we should be looking at the 500 or 600 number, build another wing instead of a middle school. I mean, that you go in with the idea that what's the number that we feel we could get away with? I mean, if you have a kindergarten of 150, could you have 220? I mean, that sounds reasonable. I would be scared to buy a house where you had a huge kindergarten, but 200, 220, you play with the numbers in that way that you go in with something that says, we understand, we're expanding, we're gonna take in some extra people from other areas in case Island Village, in case Island Village doesn't grow as much as possible. So that's my suggestion.
Can I just say, Todd, I think you said the other one that was within the realm of funding possibly was 7, right?
I mean, it's based on our discussion last night.
Right,
It's
borderline. So 7, 9.
But the issue that we have with 7, and I know that Crescent has with 7, and I think is that you're gonna split the element.
Well, there's a couple levels. In addition, you also lose recreation area for the community, because you have your choice between using that K-5 area as recreation for the community or using it for school.
And there's no middle school.
When they talked about a pool, I know a lot of people perked up
This would
about
become
that.
the middle school, so it would be a very small K-5 attached to a very large, or middle-sized middle school that may not get the full slate of.
That's my concern, is that
Lots
we'll
of-
grow middle school numbers and it'll keep us contained, but we won't grow enough to get the shiny objects that you're talking about.
Vote no for shiny objects.
The thing is, we have a great middle school. I mean, that's the thing. We could say those shiny objects are going to make us really so much better. And I understand the need to want to get those programs. But we also have a really effective middle school program for our kids. It works in this town.
And I understand the solution is get a school board member who push for those middle school.
There's some sort of guideline that says you have to have this many numbers to get the shiny things?
Actually, it was funny, I actually talked with a couple of the administrators, and I believe 2,000, if you're gonna have like a K-8, 2,000 is like the magic number to where you get more resources. When they have their benchmarks.
So you're talking about, again, back in that number, that 500-600 number.
Puts us in that ballpark.
Puts us, yeah, but get a school board member that'll fight for those middle school things, and you'll get them.
I think the hybrid plan up there would tend to work best in many ways, in that the celebration company could, in their contract, allow for that initial small expansion with the possibility of them coming up with more money. The school district winds up having 5 to 10 million in their capital budget that's not already taken care of. It's their non-bondable money that they have, and that's where they come around, and that's, I think there's $1 million needed to convert the classrooms over here. That's where they pull that money from, is that smaller pot. I think if an agreement could be reached with the celebration company, so they get their 12.3 million upfront, do some of the things we want here on the campus to accommodate us for, say, the next 5 years, with the written into the contract again, that as needed incrementally, we require you to come on and build another so many class sizes here that would protect the celebration company. They could do that out of their, what I call their small change capital budget, that 5 to 10 million, And it would be doable within their normal frame of business.
And that's what I'm saying, we just need to understand because that's feasible and beneficial. And if we don't end up with an expansion plan that can't be realized.
No, I don't think,
That's a lot more, not that we want to shy away from it, but that's going to get very complicated.
I can't speak for anyone else in the room here. I don't think people are against sort of locking down the school to Celebration residents, the K-8, and expanding it to what it needs to be for what it would grow out of the rest of your PUD. I haven't heard that anywhere. There may be some people in here that would be completely against that. I may be, speaking out of the other end that I'm speaking out of now. But that's all I have to say. And we're getting real close to 8 o'clock.
Yeah, thank you, Leonard, that's very timely. Before we kind of turn over to final comments, this next meeting, January 25th, same time, same station. We'll have results from the workshop to share. I don't think we're going to have any traffic study information then, or we'll wait from the board.
The school board might have.
School board might. So hopefully we have that information to bring to bear. Any other final comments from members?
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, everyone. Good job.
Let me turn off this camera real quick too, guys.
Okay.